Just
Sure.
want for Claire and others who are not here. Just to summarize here, we're recording. We have two goals. One is to help our interns develop a website statement on using technology wisely, particularly AI, uh, that could be useful in a school or college application. And our second goal is to add a page to the Build It Yourself website that convinces our customers and our investors and our partners that Build It Yourself is thinking carefully about the skills we're going to need in the future to live in an AI world. Okay, that's setting the stage. Um, Sorry, Ryan, for interrupting. Can you? Great.
Yeah, I can keep going. Oh, my internet's a little shaky, so hopefully you guys can hear me okay.
Yeah.
So for Rodrigo and Adi, last week I talked about fire. I'll just give a really quick summary. Obviously, fire is a completely transformative technology in the grand scheme of society and the technological leap that it granted society. And so last week we were talking about that. We discussed how I made this, metaphor of screen time, as we've been talking about, can be thought of as maybe digital fire and some of the pros and cons to this technological development. And then thinking about as we exist in that society today and that change is ongoing, how do we approach it? How do you guys approach it going into work or college or whatever it may be, and how do you interact with it day to day? Thinking about how we use these technologies every day at this point, we're using them to build the next the next technologies, and we have to think about how those will affect our human societies and the human aspect being a critical part of it because these digital technologies have a unique impact on us compared to maybe some of the past technologies we had. And so that's setting the stage a little bit. So what I've been thinking about this week was kind of from last week, we talked about maybe the pros and cons of a technology. I used fire as an example, and we're focused on screen as a whole. But then I started to think about the question of, how does society react to those changes, to those pros and cons? How do we identify them and adapt to the new way of living? And so something that I thought was interesting, I just want to highlight this kind of concept for you guys as I came across it in my research is this concept of cultural lag. And so this quote says that cultural lag refers to the idea that some aspects of culture change more slowly than others. Specifically, this usually refers to how society changes in response to a technology. And so if you think about I did not use fire as the example this time. I chose a little bit of a different one. I used the Industrial Revolution kind of as a whole. Obviously, there was many technologies that came out of it, but I think this gives a good parallel to the society and digital revolution we're living in today. So if we think about this, the Industrial Revolution in a couple of stages, you can see the timeline here. It extends across more than 100 years is really how these technologies developed and affect our society. And in the beginning, we had all these rapid technological innovations. It completely changed how we worked, where we worked, the conditions, and the lag is really the technology moves faster than our culture, than our values, than our how our society is organized around the technology. And so you can see here, as I've broken it up, there's this stage two where that lag really starts to disrupt uh, the way that we exist. And again, humans like to focus on the downsides. So I am kind of calling out the downsides here with the urban crowding leading to disease, where when there lack of labor laws, we had children and women working in terrible conditions. This caused a lot of class tension because of who these changes benefited. All to say that this really comes out of this concept of cultural lag. And of course, that lag can be caught up at this stage three. Eventually, we start to introduce, as a society, we react to the conditions that we live in, and we started to introduce social reform, legal reform through unions, public health awareness, increasing education on how to use these new technologies. And so we kind of caught up. Our values, our culture catches up to the technology. And so the reason I'm highlighting this is because I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think we are living in a very, very similar situation with a very different technology today. And we're kind of right in the middle of it. As I see it, we have this digital revolution that's been happening for a while now. And if we think of it as that, it's certainly not going to follow the same 100 or whatever it was timeline. But if we kind of overlap that timeline here, we can see stage one has already kind of happened. A lot of that tech has been developed. There's obviously new things like AI getting a lot more popularity and coming out these days. But early on, we had the PCs, internet, phones getting invented. This completely changed the way we work. People weren't sure, the organization around that was not immediate, didn't happen overnight. Um, People didn't necessarily know how to adapt to that new way of living. In stage two, that's where we're living in it right now. And that's where, as we're talking about with the screen time question and thinking about how we're going to adapt to it, these things affect our daily life. We use them all the time. Some of the, again, to focus on the downsides, there are these mental health implications that we're still learning about. The, digital addiction that's very prevalent with social media and can cause anxiety with all the stuff we've talked about. And I don't know how much you guys have heard about this, but certainly one of the big topics around AI, around all the data that's available these days, is the lack of regulation on these things. And there is data privacy concerns. You guys have probably heard about some of the data leaks that have happened over the years. They're, very big deal. Everyone's data is valuable to somebody. And there's this new concept of, or relatively new anyway, to society, this digital labor, how we can get people to work on these digital platforms. And I already mentioned the mental health implications, but we're talking about these things right now, but that is certainly a cultural lag where we're having to adapt to the technology that's been here and understand how it affects us. And then there's stage three, which is, you could say we're also in that right now. We're in the process of adapting, but this is the hypothetical future. This is where I believe we need better regulation of how we use these systems. But more generally, I think we need a kind of similar to what happened in the Industrial Revolution. We need a increase in the education on these concepts about the digital literacy, how it affects our well-being, and how really we interact with the technology. Because the the great thing about these analyzing this through a historical lens is that you get to see that we, the people, are the ones that ultimately dictate our relationship with these technologies. And so our societies are very resilient. We're going to always adapt. And so it's now kind of up to us living in this age of determining what that's going to look like. And as John was mentioning, uh, sometimes the upsides don't get as much shine in the media. And there is, I think, as we all know, tons of upside to the screen time, digital revolution, however you want to think about it. And so my question for you is kind of, how do you think we are going to adapt? What things do you think we need? What things do you think are already working? What type of cultural guardrails, so to speak, do you think will form the appropriate balance between some of the issues that we were talking about last week, specifically with social connection between people, that mental health, the way we do work, the productivity increases that we've gotten? How do we benefit from those, but avoid getting sucked into like a perpetual, endless work cycle where you can imagine, you can work 24/7 on a computer. That's a very different world than the condition of a factory for something, for example, even though they did work very long hours. Anyway, I will stop rambling. This is not obviously a website yet, but this is just another concept I wanted to introduce to you guys. I think this idea of cultural lag and really just having the awareness that this is happening right now, and also having the awareness that we are the ones that ultimately impact and decide how it will resolve and the adaptations we make to society to live with these new technologies that are all around us. So that's all I got for now, John. I don't have a website or anything yet.
Yep, fantastic. I have several comments, but Adi Rodrigo, what's your reaction to Ryan's process of thinking this through? Adi?
Um, no, I like totally agree with like how he like phrased it. I think like the sort of like hypothetical like space for innovation is like a lot larger than that of the Industrial Revolution, but I think it's like definitely a similar thing. But I think like when it comes to sort of like the regulations and rules that are being made, I think like with the new kind of technology that's being developed through the digital age, like it may be a lot harder to do so. But I think like definitely like society will try to put some regulations like into digital tech more.
Mhm. Great, great, Adi. Rodrigo, what say you?
Well, I've read about some predictions of what might happen with AI, and they say that there are three things that could happen. I think that what we described right now is like if it's very successful, if it's well done, regulated, and all that,
Mhm,
then there's the if it's just a bubble and we go to the next thing soon,
mhm.
so not much changes. And then there's the negative possibility that they, I'm not really sure what could happen, but bad things.
Robots could take over and tell us what to do rather than vice versa.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Um, Ryan, I love what you did. I think your process is infinitely logical. Um, I think you tell a story in a way that had me on the edge of my chair. Um, and I think your points are your points are just compelling. So uh, great, Rodrigo and Adi. I hope you will find some time to start in your lab book the same process that Ryan's following. Okay, let me share a few thoughts that I've been working on. Um, we go back to this periodically whenever we do a project on, well, we talk about it all the time, the importance of presenting your ideas. If you have a great idea and you don't present it well, your idea may not get the attention that it deserves. So, an important part of the Build It Yourself experience is being able to communicate our ideas in a compelling way. So, I asked Copilot um, what are attributes of a good website, and I summarized Copilot's response in these 6 points. Content is really important. I thought Ryan's content was excellent. Contrasts tend to get your attention. The good versus the bad um, it tends to be memorable. If you put too many words on a screen, many people's head starts to spin. If you're an expert, I've heard you tend to like a lot of information on the screen. But if you're just getting introduced to a concept, minimalism, lots of visuals tend to be more effective in keeping your attention. Interactivity, getting the reader involved by asking questions. I think you did that beautifully, Ryan, at the end. And drama, making your story get you on the edge of the chair, and then a call to action. And Copilot had really, I think, thought provoking uh, explanation of these elements. So I highly recommend you go through the same process I went through when we're converting our research and our positions based on that research. When we convert all of that into a compelling web page that we could use in a job application or a college application or as a statement to Build It Yourself customers. Okay, so sorry, that's just a duplicate. So I asked Copilot then to show me some examples of web pages that are really cool. And these are award-winning web pages. Dramatic picture can get your attention. And look, there's hardly any words. Let me try to expand this a little bit. The words are subdued in the background. It's just the picture that makes you say, what's this about? This looks, to a particular reader, they might want to drill down just because of the picture. I think this is interesting because it asks a profound question. Prove your humanity with a simple little graphic. And then if you want to drill down, it's actually a Reddit site. And then this is Spotify. And again, an image that attracts your attention with with a big title. I think this is an interesting site. It's from Lacoste. And it also has a dramatic picture with lots of contrast in it. The winter versus a tennis dress. It just makes your brain cells vibrate. And then it has a big title here, 30% off. That gets my attention and makes me want to read the small text. So those are some examples of the 7 points that Copilot says you should think about when you're making a compelling website. This morning I was working with a kid. This is something we do often. We try to show the ugly versus the way cool way. And this kid was drawing using graphic elements. They were making a computer game and they were just drawing their graphics as quickly as they could. And I was trying to persuade this kid that more people will play your game if you spend time on the graphics, if you spend time on the details. And the bottom line is the Apple tagline, think different. Everyone in the world can do the smiley face. At Build It Yourself, we want you to sort of think the way cool way, the different way. So here's one start at trying to lay out web pages with dramatic pictures and maybe short taglines that speak to our question, how do we use technology wisely? These are all images created in Build It Yourself owns these images. Can't we all get along? And then this is a famous image. Well, it's a takeoff of a famous image, evolution. And what distinguishes humans and what has enabled us to evolve is our ability to use tools wisely. And then another image that Build It Yourself owns, we created this with some interns when we were doing a 3D graphics program. How can we use leverage or use tools to make the world even better? I thought these are 3 images and taglines that invite the audience to think about our question. And then the final question or call to action, I'm going to see, just a couple more minutes. The final call to action is, what skills are we going to need tomorrow? I'm not sure what the image for this is. And I was thinking that, would it be interesting if we wrote a song or we asked Copilot to help us write a song about these points? Can't we all just get along? Not only humans, but you wrote with robots. And what distinguishes humans from other animals? And how can we use leverage to make the world even better? What if we write a song? So I asked Copilot to write a rap tune to try to make this playful and a little different. And I haven't studied this real carefully yet, but on quick read, I really like the playful and thoughtful way that Copilot answered this question. Please write a playful but thoughtful rap tune that expresses these thoughts. So it came through with 3 verses or 2 verses and a bridge. Wouldn't it be interesting to make a website that just shows 2 or 3 or 4 images, and behind it we get our team together to play some music and sing or and sing these lyrics. I thought that might be a website that would be, as Apple says, think different. Okay, that's what I got. Any comments, guys?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, Rodrigo, what do you like? What do you think doesn't work?
Um, well, it's what we've always done at Villager, so
Yeah, yeah.
so I agree with it.
Okay, Ryan, any take on going down this path?
Yeah, I like it. It's definitely different. I think that that website would catch someone's attention, and that's what we're going for. I think I really like personally that image of the evolving ape to human to sitting in a computer. I think that really captures kind of the
Yeah,
pros and cons of what we're talking about, or at least just the situation that we're talking about here. So I think that's a great one for the topic. Um, and yeah, I guess my only comment is, as we talked about with the content being a really important part, I do feel like we should maybe write our own lyrics, use the Copilot suggestions, and bring our own flavor to the music. I think it might read a little robotic for what we're
yeah.
trying to for the people we are. So, but
Good.
I like the idea. I think that's the great part of these tools is it allows us to iterate very quickly and get somewhere like this with this a very unique idea that I had not thought of, certainly. So I like that.
Great, great. Okay, to be continued next week. Mission for next week. Try to update your lab books, Rodrigo and Adi. I'll send my lab book around the horn. Ryan, I hope you could send your lab book also.
Yep.
Send it to the whole group. Just reply all to the agenda I sent out about an hour ago. And
Okay.
mission for next week is we want to get research, and then from the research, draw some conclusions for a statement, and then start to put that statement in a PowerPoint spec for a web page. Okay, Ryan, thank you for your time. Adi,
Thank you guys. Have a good one.
to be continued next week. Bye,
Thank
Thank you,
guys.
you.
John.
Bye.